So the session is called Sysinternals 25th birthday, which just was a few months, maybe a month ago. I was probably the biggest honor that I've ever had in my career on this topic, or I mean in this industry, was that Mark Russunovich asked me to be one of the speakers for the 25th birthday conference. So there were there 6 or 7 speakers. I was doing a session on process monitor. I did host the Sysinternals 20th birthday conference in Finland, but that was like totally unofficial, although Mark was doing a keynote remotely. But it was organized by Microsoft. This was organized by Microsoft, and it's the most downloaded toolkit from Microsoft. The most downloaded tool is Process Explorer. With I think last time I checked, it was about 3.7 million downloads per month. And second biggest one is Process Monitor. So what I thought I'd do was just a session on this, because when I do keynotes, they're, well, technical or not technical, but they're not that much hands-on, because it's more like world healing stuff. So I want to do a session with some concrete examples and concrete tips that you can use with the tools. And I tried to kind of come up with some sort of a best tips and tricks of Sysinternals tools. There's so much of the tools that it's impossible to go through them. I have actually a 2-day course about Sysinternals tools, and even on that 2-day course I can barely scratch the surface of every one of them. The oldest tool from Sysinternals is actually a tool called, I can actually show you, let's open up browser here. live.sysinternals.com, the only website from Microsoft that actually makes some sense. It is perfectly okay to use it. It's updated by Microsoft, and it is an official website, okay? So it's really taken care by Microsoft. But here you can see this control to cap. That's actually the first ever tool from Sysinternals. Control to cap is a tool which simply switched the caps lock and control buttons to the reversed order, because Mark Russunovich is a Unix guy. And on a Unix terminal, caps lock and control keys are reversed, if you've ever used an old Unix terminal. So that was the first tool, and then he started developing different kinds of tools. And then in 2006, he sold the company. It's a horrible story in many ways. So Mark Russunovich and Bryce Coxwell owned the company, and they sold the company to Microsoft for some tens of millions of dollars. And Mark Russunovich and Bryce Coxwell started working for Microsoft, but they had 78 employees, which all Microsoft fired. So they fired 78 people and took Mark and Bryce to work for Microsoft. They had a minimum 3-year contract to work for Microsoft. That day that passed, Bryce left the company instantly. So he never wanted to be there. Mark's there now as the CTO of Azure. And if we look at the bigger picture, the reason why they needed him was not just the tools, but there is a really big problem with Azure. The problem is that the senior architect behind Azure kernel is Dave Cutler, and Dave Cutler wrote the kernel for NT as well. He was already retired when he wrote the kernel for Azure, which means that if you have a big company that wants to invest in Azure and put everything that your company has and rely on Azure, do you really want to rely on a company that only has one person who knows everything about the product and he's 75 years old? It's a little bit bad risk management, okay? So they needed a new public figure as well. And Mark's of course good with that, because Mark is an exceptional presenter and already very famous. he didn't really have to. He didn't really have to probably sell the company if he didn't want to. He was doing very well already. So Internal Software, which was the company that was bought by Microsoft, was actually very successful. Their biggest products were ERD Commander, for example, which was their number one product. Mark's famous for his Ferrari jokes. Well, it's the jokes, not his jokes, but they're jokes about Mark's Ferraris always. So while we were in Amsterdam, actually, city center, I was there for a Windows internals training where Mark Russunovich was still training. There's 40 people in the classroom, and we were having lunch. And during lunch, we were speaking there. Almost everyone was outside of the country. So for all of us, what do you need to do when you go to Amsterdam? And there's other things as well, but I mean, I'm talking about bicycles now, okay? So everyone was like, we need a bike. Like, you need to ride a bike here. So we all had bikes from the hotel, okay? Everyone rented a bike. So now we came to the venue, and there was 40 exactly the same kind of bikes. But you were supposed to return them. So we were sitting having lunch there, and we were like complaining, like, how are we gonna know whose bike is whose? So we're in trouble here, like. And then Mark Russunovich comes and he joins our table, and he's like, oh, I so feel your pain. I have the same problem because I live next door to the CEO of AMD company, the chipset company, and we both have exactly same color Ferraris. So in the morning when you go out, you never know which one is yours. And we're like, yeah, that's exactly the same. Exactly the same problem. And now a few years ago I met him and he has a new Ferrari. So he bought a very, very expensive Ferrari. And the problem is that where he lived, well, he got divorced a few years ago. So before that, he lived in a house, but the problem is that he couldn't drive his Ferrari out of his garage because he has so high speed bumps on the road that the Ferrari can't cross over those speed bumps. And I met him and I didn't know if this was true, so I asked him like, hey, Mark, is it really true about the Ferrari? That you can't get it out of the garage? Yeah, it is. Like, okay. And I heard that you bought it, then you have to drive a Tesla. So you drive the Tesla to the Redmond campus every day. Yeah, I have bought a Tesla and I ride it to work every day because I can't drive the Ferrari. I was like, yeah, okay. So, but isn't that annoying? I was like, yeah, well, of course. Well, I can't really say I feel you, but yeah, it must be annoying. I was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, yeah, you can't get the Ferrari out of the garage. And then he looked at me, no, sorry, now you got me wrong. I'm not talking about that. So what's annoying? The Tesla is faster. That's so annoying. Different problems. Anyway, nowadays Mark doesn't have that much time to build the tools because he's the CTO of Azure. When I was a young guy going to my first ever tech ed in 2013, no one knew who I was. So just some guy from Finland. And I had to make a name out of myself, so I had to make people remember me. And that's actually the reason why my title is Senior Technical Fellow. Because when I started my career and Mark Russunovich was speaking at every tech ed and was the most famous person in our industry, he was only a technical fellow. Okay? So I chose my own title to be Senior Technical Fellow just because of him. Okay? I'm self-employed, I can choose my own titles, that's very convenient. So it took like 1 year and people at the tech ed corridors were suddenly talking things like, how is it possible that that young guy is already a senior technical fellow? Mark is only a technical fellow. Because on Microsoft, the highest rank you can get as a technical person is really technical fellow. Well, there is one senior technical fellow, Dave Cutler, okay? But that's like a Highlander thing, so as long as he lives, there's no other senior technical fellows, okay? So that's why I was a technical fellow. And then I still have that saved. I saved one email. That was the best time of my life. I was in Barcelona for TechEd Europe, I think my second ever TechEd. And I sent an email to all the speakers that we're going to have a speaker dinner, informal speaker dinner. We're going to go to this restaurant. And I hope many people would join. And I sent it to everyone, including Mark. And then after some time, I got a reply from Mark, and I still saved it. I cherish it because he answered that I have a session tomorrow, so I can't sadly join you for dinner. But hey, Sami, I was just appointed as the Chief Technical Officer of Azure. Maybe it's about time for you to upgrade your title. So he knew how I was. I was really proud. Mark knows me. So the joke ended up very well. And I've been using Sysinternals tools since I was a kid. I remember the first times I started working as domain admin for a company called PepsiCo. I went to work there because I thought I can have unlimited soda. And it ended up being a very stupid call because I did not know that PepsiCo and Coca-Cola do not produce any soda. Okay, they're just marketing companies. It's the local breweries that build the soda itself. So I didn't get any freaking soda. But anyway, I went to work there. I was 16. Suddenly, I was the domain admin for PepsiCo's NT4 network with about 30,000 workstations around Europe and northern parts of Africa. There were two of us, me and a Norwegian guy. And it took me a while to get to be a domain admin there, so I started off in the help desk, and my dad sold and built computers. Okay, so I'm used to very different kinds of troubleshooting. For example, I have a multi-IO card. Okay, sorry for anyone who's not old. Okay, but a multi-IO card. So we had two IO controllers on a traditional PC IO card called a multi-IO card, a master and a slave controller, and the card was put in an ISA bus, and we put it in the slot. So we built computers with my dad, and we sold it to Finnish schools. And I had like 300 computers in the school. We bought those multi-IO cards from Taiwan, but they had a fault. They had a problem in it. They would crash the computer. And now I had to go and fix it. So what I did, I would be probably shot today if I would do that. But at that time, that was normal. So I went to the school. And the only thing I had was I had a knife in my hand. Hello, what are you doing here? I'm here to fix computers. Okay, there you go. Then I go in, and I had to open every 300 computers chassis, take out the multi-IO card, and you had to carve 1 millimeter off the board. Okay, and then you put it back, and then it didn't crash anymore. This is how I learned to fix computers. So it's really annoying when someone is like, PowerShell this and that and blah, blah, blah. It's like, come on, like, this is a knife. I also knew the sweet spot of any monitor. You know, when you had those old CRT monitors, my sons and daughters call it box TV. They don't even know really what it is. They call it a box TV. So if you had a box TV for your computer, so a CRT monitor, that sometimes the picture went like this. And there's one certain spot for every freaking monitor where you have to hit it with the appropriate force. Okay? That's called the sweet spot. Okay? So you just put-dong, and it goes straight again. So I went to Pepsi. I was 16, and they had the most expensive neck monitors ever on the tables. And they're like, oh, that's twisted again. And I went there, let me fix it. That cost like 100,000 marks, stop hitting it. Oh, it's fixed, come on. So that was a very common problem. Another very common problem in NT4 was that if you switched the screen resolution to a value that was not supported by your CRT monitor, it would stay black. It would not revert after 15 seconds, like it does now. It would stay black. So people called me to the help desk all the time. I tried to make I don't know why, but they always said, I tried to make my picture bigger. It's not big, it's not bigger, but just the tip, it's not getting any bigger if you change the resolution. But Anyway, so they wanted more space. That's, I guess, what they meant. And then they had it, and then they just went black, and they called me. And this was considered black magic at that time when I first tried out PsExec from Sysinternals. Because you found a command line tool that would switch the resolution to 1024 x 768, and that would fix it. But with PsExec, you could run it on a remote machine. And that was black magic. I'm sitting in Helsinki, someone from Africa calls and says, hey, my screen is black completely, I can't see anything anymore. And then I would just be in Helsinki like, better? Thank you. So PsExec, at that time only remote thing was like PC Anywhere. Who's used PC Anywhere? Thank God. I'll dial into another computer and remotely manage it. And anyway, let's get into this. Process Explorer, the most downloaded tool. I wanted to get some super simple tips for this, and I have to remember that these are 45-minute sessions. I got a 60-minute session to start with the day with, and now every session is 45 minutes, yes. So, Process Explorer, let's just get this running from a demo machine here. Where's my Windows 10? So, one of the most important things I've learned from Process Explorer, when I teach people from very many different companies at the same time, which I'm just trying to figure out who the hell is this because it's not. Okay, sorry. I did a session from the server here with remote desktop to this machine. So we had, and then I hijacked the session, so we had way too much privileges. So do not do that. This one should be better. Okay, yeah, this looks better. So local admins can steal anyone's session, not just by impersonating them. They can actually physically change to their desktop without any passwords. So again, once more for today, please do not let anyone be an admin. I teach, as I said, I have like this amount of people in a classroom. So I learn a lot. That's why my most successful sessions currently are, they used to be black belt troubleshooting, whatever. Nowadays, I usually in conferences, I do a 45 life hacks of Windows in 45 minutes. Because I can gather these every freaking day. I mean, you come to my courses and you think you learn a lot, but think about me. Because people have different ways of doing the same thing. So I learn a lot. I have an endless resource of tips and tricks all the time. So I started gathering those and building sessions about them. I call these the dreaded student hand moment. I'm quite sure you've seen this. So this happens when you're like, well, you know, in Windows you can't do this. And then you see someone with the hand up and you know already that you don't know something, okay? So I'm like, the first one I ever had was with regedit. It was like I had regedit and I was like, yeah, well, the best register key in the world ever is HKey local machine software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, image file execution option. That's the funniest thing ever. You can do this and this. The only problem is that it's so far in the path that it takes ages to get there. Like, yeah, what? Why don't you use the favorites? Oh, so they added favorites in Windows 10, yeah. Oh no, it was added in Windows XP. You know that like you pay for my courses, so I have to say like, that's a great tip. Thank you so much. Let's take a break. Just want to kill the student. It's like, come on, I've spent 15 years of my time not understanding that there's a freaking favorite there. Anyway, so this time I had the same thing. I was trying to teach my students how to... Actually, my student had an example. So he had his computer with him. And on that computer, suddenly, in the background... I don't know why I actually shut that down. I should have kept that running. In the background, he had a window popping up, and it had an empty search bar. I mean, it had a text box and a search button, but it had no title. So there's a window that just like pop, and after some time again, pop, and just disappears. And he's like, what is it? How do I figure out this? Well, we can use Process Monitor, of course. But if it takes a long time, then Process Monitor is extremely heavy when it comes to capturing data. So we can capture it with, probably with Process Explorer. And I tried to show him that in Process Explorer, if you start an app, the idea is that it goes green. So if I start Notepad, just open this, and if I start more notepads, you should see some green lines there in the bottom, okay? But it disappears. So you can't see it, okay? Well, I was teaching my students, well, you know, you can always go here and you can just choose update speed and put it to like 10 seconds, okay? Because when it only updates once per 10 seconds, then when it updates, you have 10 seconds to see that. This was okay. For once, this was okay, because this hand was attached to Mark Russunovich. And I think he has all the rights to tell me how that works. So he, Sami, that's not the way to do it. Okay, master. I'm sorry. I'm not worthy. Just change it back to second, and the most remarkable tip of the history of Process Explorer. You hit space bar. It pauses Process Explorer. Don't hit it again. If you hit it again, it unfreezes and then you lose everything. So space bar to pause it. Then whatever happens for the next 6 hours, whatever you want, however you want, how long you want, you go back here and then you press F5. And then it refreshes one frame. Okay? So it shows everything that happened during the past 6 hours. If you press spacebar, it's going to unfreeze again and you lose it. But spacebar, and then if, let's say, we kill these, all of these, and then you go back and you press F5, and there you go, okay? Also makes Process Explorer one of the world's simplest resource troubleshooting tools, because you can have measurements that you normally see there. If you put in, like, for example, if you put in page faults delta, it normally shows you how many page faults you had per second, but now it becomes as long as you want. Pause it, exercise the application, do whatever you want. After 2 hours, if you hit F5, you will see 6,000 page faults. I mean, that's accumulated throughout the pausing and the next refresh. So it makes all those delta values very convenient to use, because they're not only second, they're as long as you want. Plus, there's no drawback on performance like Process Monitor would. All right? Process Monitor, now to talk about Process Monitor, I'll show you an example. And this was as life-altering for me as the Process Explorer example. So, I had an example from a student where, well, actually, sorry, this is not from a student, this is from my own computer. So, suddenly, my computer did not get online anymore. I started getting weird messages from Smart Screen, my OneDrive wouldn't sync, all weird stuff. And then it took me a while and I found out that my LAN proxy, my proxy had been changed to 127.0.0.1. Okay? We all know that that's not good for your internet connectivity, okay? So it loopbacks everything to your proxy. The proxy loopbacks everything to your own loopback address. All right? Well, first I have to figure out what that is. so I have to find out with Procmon. Well, problem with Procmon is not that it wouldn't find something. Problem is same as Google's, which is noise. It finds way too much, okay? So we've already now gathered 140,000 events. Well, let's first figure out what that setting is. So what we do is we will find the setting first. Let's put it here. And then I am going to put in a filter and say that I'm only interested in operation is reg set value. I'm using Zoom, it's live Zoom. Zoom, it was developed during that course I was talking about in Amsterdam. So Mark developed Zoom it during one night. It's one of the most downloaded tools of Microsoft.com, and it was done on one night in Amsterdam because Mark was pissed at a student. The student actually, we had this like 40 people in the room, everyone's been waiting for years to get to Mark's classes. They were really expensive, really hard to get, especially in Europe. So we had all been waiting for that. And then suddenly Mark is showing he had like an InFocus projector. Oh no, he had a Canon projector, but he has an InFocus app that you could zoom things on the screen. And he was just saying that it's very convenient. Any of you, if you need to do any presentations, this is a really cool app you can use to zoom in on the screen. And then one student, I'm sorry, Mr. Russunovich, but I don't think you have the license to use that. It's like 39 people look at that one guy like, many things are legal here. What about committing murder? And Mark was as amazed. He's like, we're here, I'm teaching you Windows internals for a freaking expensive course, and we're talking about user license agreements. And he's like, what do you mean? Well, you know, the app can only be used if you're projecting with an InFocus projector. And that's a Canon. And Mark was like, okay, I'll stop and I will check this out. I'm very sorry. Then he went back after the day, we went back to the hotel, and then we went back to the venue next morning, and he showed us an email from InFocus. And he apologized, like, I'm sorry if I broke your end user license agreement. I checked it and my student was correct. I have violated your licenses, so I'm willing to pay for all consequences and blah, blah, blah. And of course showed the answer as well, because the answer from the InFocus team was, oh, we forgive you, Mark, you are the God. So he of course showed that as well. And then after he showed it, he started Zoom it. And he's like, I developed this last night at the hotel. Are you fine with this? Okay. Anyway, now I've had some time to tell some stories for you, and we can see that we're getting a lot of events here. Okay, so we are showing all sorts of events. I'm gonna stop monitoring right now. So I'm gonna clean out the log. Then I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna set my setting again. So the proxy setting, when this guy lets me to do that. So connections, LAN settings, and I'll change this to 2, for example. Now if you want to, you can use the target tool. So you can just change the target here and point at what you're looking for. Okay, like that. And then we'll just go and change it. And you can see that that's the registry key. Proxy server, proxy enable. Okay. Now proxy server, I'm going to take as a filter. Remember the meat is here, always hiding in the detail here. So you can check it here. That says 127.0.0.2. Okay. I'm going to just right click and include that. Okay. So now that's the only thing that I'm looking for. I'll clear the log and I'll go back. And now I have to be very careful. If you use the target to find something, then the problem is that the target sets a process ID filter, which means it's not filtered by the name, but it's filtered by a process ID. So if I go and change this now back to 1, see if we can see anything. Oh, we don't see anything. That's because there's the filter for the process ID. Let's remove that. Okay. And now we have a possibility of always knowing when someone changes this. So now something changes it to 2, okay, and we can see it. Now, why did I even go through this was because when I changed it back, then it took like 2 weeks and it reappeared. And I started to be very, very worried because I'm a security person and I have a very good track record in keeping my stuff safe, okay? I guess it's better to say that at least to my knowledge I have never been hacked. but anyway, so I'm like quite proud of my own protection stuff. And if you suddenly see someone trying to route all network traffic back to your own computer, that sounds fishy. I mean, that's only malware does that. So I was really worried. Took it off 2 weeks and it's back. Now the problem is I would instantly know when it happens, but the log size is heavily increasing all the time. It's now 200,000 events. Because by default, Procmon only filters the view. Everything goes to the log and the filter only applies to what you see. It's very good, so you can change filters later on, but not for trying to figure out something that happens every 2 weeks. Because tomorrow morning, this computer would be dead. Because by default, all the packing file goes into the page file. The page file will blow up until you run out of space on your C drive, and then you have to reboot. So the magic here lies here. Filter drop filtered events. Okay? Turn that on. And now you can see no events here. Then after 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever, someone goes and changes this value. You get that one event, but there are no more events in the log. Okay? And now you can keep Procmon running for a decade if you want. You should reboot occasionally because of hotfixes. But anyway, okay? So for me that was life-altering, because I always thought Procmon's problem is that you can't use it for extensive period or like extended periods of time. But you can, as long as you remember drop filtered, then it always filters before it goes to the log. Another one for Procmon. There is no such thing as remote Procmon. But Procmon has a lot of these cool parameters. Especially there's one that many might not have seen before. And there's this weird thing here that says ring buffer size and ring buffer. Like that doesn't really, seems like it doesn't say anything. It sounds very weird. But if you read what it says flight recorder mode. That's actually added in the, not the last, but the previous version of Procmon. So there is a flight recorder mode, which means that works like a black box. So it keeps a ring buffer. So it constantly monitors, but it just overwrites the log. So kind of getting the same as I was with the previous example, you could try the flight recorder mode as well. Now that we can do this, then we have luckily PsExec that can run anything you want remotely. Okay? When you have a command you want to run remotely, you can use PsExec. When you have a PowerShell command, you can run PowerShell. I'm not hip and cool, but just so that you don't think I'm like, I'm so old I can't find things. I have this PowerShell example here as well for anyone who thinks I'm an old fart because I use PsExec. But this, to be fair, this session is about Sysinternals tools, so that's why I am going to use PsExec. I once shot myself in the leg. I started a Twitter storm. Mark Russunovich had fixed one big flaw in PsExec, which was that before, like maybe 5-6 years ago, PsExec would send the credentials unencrypted over the wire. So it was, you could eavesdrop for passwords. And then he fixed it, and I wrote on Twitter, "Thank you, Mark Russunovich. You have fixed PsExec. PsExec now encrypts credentials on the wire." And I did not know what I did, because this was like 5 years ago, and I started a Twitter storm, because I had a million answers to that tweet. Who uses PsExec anymore when you have PowerShell? Who is so old that uses PsExec? Everyone uses PowerShell. So annoying. But then I was saved by a Swedish guy. For once, a Finn was saved by a Swedish guy. So Johan Arvidmark, he's been speaking here a few times as well. Johan saved me. So Johan wrote one tweet, and he wrote a tweet that said, "How would you remotely enable PowerShell?" The storm stopped. And then there was one more tweet. PsExec. Yes. We win. So if for nothing else, you can enable PowerShell remotely, okay? It's, no, honestly, I'm not even kidding. I mean, it's sometimes really convenient because you can do stuff like, you could just, if you don't have PowerShell remoting on, you could do PsExec for student 25, which is the computer next to me, PowerShell get service, for example. So you don't have to have remote PowerShell on because this will open PsExec but run PowerShell on that machine and then just push it back, okay? But of course easier to just then enable PowerShell remoting. Anyway, PsExec to that computer. Now a very common question I get from people is how do I remotely troubleshoot a machine? I need two things. I need, if someone wants me to fix something, I need Procmon trace and I need a network trace. Neither one of those need any extra applications. I mean NetSH trace. Remember, since Windows 7 you can take a network trace without installing Wireshark or Netmon or Message Analyzer. Just run NetSH trace and it'll trace your network and then you can analyze it with Wireshark. Just have to, there's a GitHub repo for a tool that converts that ETL file into a PCAP format, which Wireshark understands. But you have to get it running on the other machine. Same goes for Procmon. This person here has some issues with Notepad. It's very common in my classroom to have issues with Notepad. So he's running Notepad, has issues, and we would help him from the service desk side, but Procmon has never supported remote monitoring. So PsExec, I'm going to run it as the system account, not interactive, but I will use don't wait. If you don't have Procmon on the remote computer, you have to add C, because then it will copy the binary first over and then execute it. But I already have Procmon on that one, I don't have to do that. So PsExec SD student, Procmon, backing file, you have to add because you can't put it in there. A page file, so I'll put that on C temp proc Sami PML quiet and accept EULA. You have to put that every time you use Sysinternals tools from the command line. Okay, we'll start that. And now this one sees nothing, and then you just tell them, can you please reproduce the issue, okay? And then they will just use like, okay, I have Notepad here, I don't know how I can get a underlined font. No idea, okay? Thank you. Then you have to gracefully stop logging because otherwise it will corrupt the data. So instead of backing file, you change this to terminate. That will terminate PsExec. Then we'll copy over student 25 $temp. What did I do? Proc Sami, that one. Okay, copy that over. Open Procmon. And a few more very good tips about Procmon. First of all, what you can see is tool system details. So you know that the trace was not done from your own computer, but this is student 252. What did I miss? What? This should not be host name. This is 252. I forgot to sacrifice a virtual machine for the demo gods. You have to always sacrifice a VM before you start a session. You have to go here and delete. Okay, not. Honestly, I don't know what happened. That's a huge trace file. I didn't even open it. Okay. This one, of course. Now, tools, system details. Okay, student 25 with Windows 7 box. Just verify that you are not looking at your own computer's trace. And then a very good tool which is called process tree. The process tree shows you like a view, almost like Process Explorer from that time that they were running. And you can see Notepad there. Notepad was running at a certain point. And then you can just right-click Notepad and choose Add to Include Filter, which means now you have a remotely captured view of everything Notepad did during that time that the person ran Notepad and they didn't even see you do anything. Okay? So remote Procmon. Autruns, super cool. I don't know if you've done this, but I'm going to show you one cool trick about this as well. So what if you have an unbootable Windows machine? That never happens. Let's restart this machine, and I'm going to boot this from a Windows PE. So any kind of installation media, for example, that's a Windows installation media, it's fine. And then if you have an unbootable Windows 10 machine, and Microsoft will tell you, you do dism this, dism that. Okay? That's how you fix them. So horrible command line. Dism this, dism that. That's not very nice. What if we would have a GUI to do the same? Well, I thought for a long time that that doesn't really help here, because now the problem is that I have Windows PE running Shift F10. Now if I run Autruns, then it won't run. Okay, where's my CD? Sorry, I have it on the C drive. C, program files, x86 sysint. Autruns, it won't run, because you remember this is the reason why Microsoft now delivers Sysinternals tools also pre-extracted as 64-bit versions, because Windows PE and NanoServer, for example, they don't have a 32-bit subsystem. So they can't launch this 32-bit stub that would extract the 64-bit version from inside of it. Okay? So you have to run Autruns 64. But now the problem here is, even if I would say that I want to see drivers, well, it doesn't show me that much. That's because you have a setting that says that it's supposed to hide Windows stuff. So you can say that don't hide Windows entries. Now you can see this. But if you would go and uncheck something from here, it doesn't help, because X. Okay, we're looking at the we're looking at the Windows PE in your RAM. That's the Windows running. The dead machine is on the hard disk. So, File, Analyze Offline System. This PC, C drive, Windows folder, select, OK. And now you can just go and uncheck the bad drivers from here. Okay? Because now it's analyzing and changing the actual Windows on the hard disk, not just the X drive with the Windows PE. Live KD. I'm teaching people a lot of how to create dumps, memory dumps from different machines, and we blue screen machines all the time. It's sometimes, that's actually also quite funny if I'll just, let's just reboot this box. I don't know how much you have used the Not My Fault, but Not My Fault is the tool from Sysinternals that can crash boxes, and it's not there. It's sorry. Oh, it's there on the D drive. So D, Not My Fault 64. So it can just crash anything by hitting the crash. But the funny thing is that it also has a parameter for that. Mark Minasi would said, use this for good, not evil. But Be funny to just try it out. Oh, it wouldn't work. You have to remember to accept the EULA. Sorry. It's so annoying. This way, okay? Anyway, LiveKD, if you want to get a memory dump out of a machine, and it's on Hyper-V, for example, here, I have these virtual machines running on Hyper-V. So really cool thing is that although this machine is not supposed to be possible to debug because it's not booted into debugging mode, that's the protection in Windows, that you can't access the memory because it's not in debugging mode. But for some weird reason, program files, x86, Windows kits, debuggers, x64, LiveKD, -Hyper-V, _ student25 _4. Now you can think why people say that you can't run privileged access workstations as virtual machines on Hyper-V. Because you don't have physical ownership. Someone else owns you and someone else can read your memory as much as they want, because this weirdly enough works. I can actually get a full debugging session. Oh, what? I might have opened it already before. That'll take a while for that to actually kill out. Let's try the other machine next to it. So I can't wait. I just had a where? Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. Let's try the other VM. That should be available. So I tested this out before we started the session, so this should work. And while that's doing that, we can do that on my machine as well, and we're going to do it on every freaking machine so that we get one working, okay? I'm going to do it on my own machine. This you should not do that, okay? Don't do this. Have a session and then decide to show demos on your live machine, okay? So I'm just gonna connect to this machine with LiveKD. Oops, there's one. So LiveKD will take a memory dump of your memory with a driver and make it look like a dead memory dump, which means you can attach a debugger to that dump file and effectively bypass the protection provided by the debugging mode, okay? But now the cool thing about this is that you can say .dump /f ctemp samidump.tmp. And it actually takes a full memory dump of the machine without booting it. So as normally Microsoft will mostly say that you should blue screen the machine to get the memory dump, this way you can do that on a live machine. And now I would have hoped I was able to show it to you on the Hyper-V platform as well, because there you can do it to the Hyper-V machines. So the exactly same thing can be done, but you can attach straight to that VM and then just dump that to the local server. But luckily for me, Windows generally doesn't work. So I have business. And people come to my classes. The last thing I really had there was Zoomit, which I kind of told the story already. And then RDC Man, this was fun. They have now changed, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but Remote Desktop Connection Manager. It was a lonely child inside of Microsoft and no one took care of it. And now last year, Sysinternals took it to under their wings. So RDC Man now has a developer again. I don't like remote desktoping into servers. If you heard my keynote, just don't RDP. But what I do need to do every week is that I need to have a view of my classroom. These are actually the 4 Estonian students that I have from last week. So I can monitor them constantly on how they're doing on those classroom machines. And there's a real use for RDP there. Those are shadow sessions, which means that I don't capture the session to myself, but I'm just viewing it. But now with the COVID, I'm home. My students are all around the world. So normally I would walk around the classroom and ask, how are you doing? Do you have any issues? People are so shy to ask for help. So it's just better that I can continuously keep an eye on what they do. and they're also not doing some dirty stuff. Okay, I'm over time, so the best feature of PowerPoint is that nowadays when you hit the end button, it actually goes to the last slide and not to the dark page which says end of your slideshow, because now you can make everyone believe that that was actually my last slide and I was able to go through everything in time. Anyway, if you like this stuff and you want more, all my classes are here, available for 30 days. They're all online. So you can get some more stuff from there if you want. And I'm going to go back my stuff and I'm going to head for sunny Orlando, hopefully, and I hope to see you sometime later. Thank you very much.